Level 1, the Garage Builder. You're 16 years old, and your car is a 1996 Honda Civic hatchback you picked up for €700 from someone who looked happy to see it leave. Rust circles the rear wheel arches, the driver's door handle barely works, and the exhaust buzzes every time the engine climbs above 3,000 RPM. Most people see an old headache. You see an opportunity. Your garage isn't much of a garage. It's a small concrete space connected to your parents' house that smells of old oil, holds an unused freezer, and shelves stacked with leftover paint from projects no one ever finished. You push everything to one side, hang a single fluorescent light overhead, roll the Civic inside, and begin. At first, you have no real idea what you're doing. That's worth admitting. You watch YouTube tutorials on an old laptop balanced on a stool because a proper workshop setup isn't in the budget. You pause the video, try the repair, return to the screen, and replay the same section after realizing you missed something. You round off a stubborn bolt and spend nearly an hour removing it. You connect a hose incorrectly, and suddenly the engine runs rough until you discover your mistake. Every failure costs time. Sometimes money you barely have. But every mistake also teaches lessons that no tutorial can fully explain. Your first upgrade is a cold air intake. You spend weeks comparing brands, reading reviews, and saving enough to buy one. Installation takes an afternoon. The engine note changes. Immediately smoother down low, sharper when the revs climb. It doesn't add much horsepower, but it feels like it does. At 16, that feeling is priceless. You sit in the driveway listening to the engine idle, realizing the biggest change wasn't under the hood. It happened inside you. The next project is lowering springs. You study every guide you can find. Then order the most affordable set with decent reviews. The first attempt without the proper equipment reminds you how dangerous shortcuts can be. You borrow a spring compressor from a neighbor, slow down, and follow every step carefully. When the car finally sits back on the ground, it's about 15 millimeters lower than before. You spend the next hour driving simply to enjoy the difference. This is how nearly every skilled car builder begins. Not inside a high-end workshop. Not after years of formal training. It starts in a cramped garage, with imperfect tools, countless mistakes, and the determination to keep learning until experience replaces uncertainty. Level 2, the Weekend Enthusiast. You're 18 now. The Civic has evolved through several stages. New wheels, aftermarket suspension, and a front lip. You painted yourself that's just a little uneven if someone looks closely. By now, you know this car inside and out. You know how it behaves on a cold morning. You recognize the strange rattle it makes over one particular bump. You know every modification, where it sits, and why you installed it. About 6 months ago, you found your first local car meet. Every Sunday evening, dozens of enthusiasts gather in a parking lot, creating a community built around modified cars. The first time you arrived, it felt like walking into a place where everyone already knew each other while you knew absolutely nobody. You parked beside a lowered Volkswagen. Its owner walked over, glanced at your Civic, and asked about your suspension setup. You ended up talking for over an hour. The community teaches lessons no garage ever could. You discover builds you never imagined. You begin to recognize the difference between genuine quality and something that only looks impressive. That distinction only comes with experience. Someone points out that your wheel fitment could be much better. Another explains why correcting your brake balance should come before lowering the car any further. The best knowledge doesn't always come from videos. Sometimes it comes from conversations with people who've already made the same mistakes. You also begin to understand the unwritten hierarchy within car culture. Cars are judged with an honesty that can feel harsh until you realize it's based on respect. Nobody sugarcoats a weak build because they believe you're capable of making it better. You stop treating criticism as an insult and start seeing it as valuable information. Your project becomes more refined, not more extreme. Eventually you discover something every serious enthusiast learns. Adding more parts is easy. Knowing when to stop is what separates a clean build from an unfinished one. Level 3, the Circuit Learner. You're 20 years old when someone from a car meet invites you to your first track day. A rail racing circuit timed sessions and instructors available for new drivers. You arrive expecting to drive fast. Instead, you realize you barely know how to drive your own car. The opening session lasts 20 minutes. An experienced instructor rides beside you for the first few laps. He doesn't interrupt much. He simply watches. After 3 laps, he points out 3 specific mistakes. You're braking too soon and applying too much pressure. You're entering corners with too much speed and sacrificing your exit. Your grip on the wheel is too tight, making every steering input less smooth. The rest of the day is spent improving one habit at a time. You quickly learn that driving a modified car on public roads isn't the same as driving on a track. It's the difference between hearing music and performing it. One is observation. The other demands complete focus. After that first track day, your modifications become far more practical. High-performance brake pads, racing fluid that withstands heat, and tires with significantly more grip because nothing improves lap times more than better tires. Everything else becomes secondary. You begin removing unnecessary weight. The rear seats disappear. The spare tire comes out. Parts that seemed essential for daily driving suddenly have no place. On a race track, the car becomes quicker. You become quicker too. Those two improvements happen together. And after a while, you can't separate one from the other. This is the part of car tuning few people explain before you experience it. The machine and the driver improve side by side. A faster car in the hands of an inexperienced driver only makes the same mistakes happen at higher speed. But a skilled driver behind the wheel of a mostly stock car can often find lap time that expensive modifications never could. Level 4, the Dedicated Builder. You're 23 years old. The Civic is gone. You sold it to someone who reminded you of yourself a few years earlier and used the money, your savings, and a loan from your father to buy something with far greater potential. A second generation Mitsubishi Eclipse GSX. All-wheel drive. Factory turbocharged, a platform built for much bigger goals. This time, you build it the right way. Not because you couldn't before, but because now you understand what doing it properly actually means. Every upgrade serves a purpose. The turbo is replaced because the original can't deliver the airflow needed for your horsepower target. The fuel system is upgraded because extra power demands extra fuel. The intercooler grows larger because cooler air is denser, and denser air creates more power. Every modification supports the next. You're finally thinking about the car as one complete system instead of separate parts. For the first time, you tune the engine management yourself. A friend who's been doing it for years lends you an ECU ref flashing setup. You spend 2 entire weekends learning the software. The first time you adjust the map, record the data, and see the engine respond exactly as expected. Something changes in the way you think. The engine becomes a network of inputs and outputs. The ECU is simply the interpreter. Tuning is the art of making that conversation more precise and more efficient. Until now, you've mostly watched others do this. Now you're the one making the decisions. The Eclipse produces 300 horsepower on a conservative dyno tune at a workshop you genuinely trust. Not an estimate. Not a number repeated online. A figure backed by real data. You drive home, and every minute of that 30-minute journey demands your full attention. For the first time, you're not simply driving a car. You're driving something you truly understand. Level 5, the respected builder. You're 26 now, and you've earned a place in the regional tuning community. You're not famous, but people know who you are. Your builds get shared online. People recognize your car when you arrive at events. Even experienced builders know your name because you've asked smart questions and produced work that speaks for itself. You begin helping other enthusiasts with their projects, not as a business, but because you enjoy solving difficult problems, or because someone trusted you with their car, and that trust deserves to be respected. You become good at diagnosing issues. A friend's Subaru has been tuned by multiple people but still stumbles under boost. You spend an entire Saturday with a laptop and a wideband sensor, checking every possibility one step at a time. Eventually, you discover a tiny vacuum leak that several experienced tuners overlooked. For the first time in 2 years, the engine runs exactly as it should. That's when you understand something important. Building and diagnosing are two completely different skills. Building is knowing how every part fits together. Diagnosing is understanding why everything stopped working. Both require knowledge. But diagnosis demands something more. The ability to recognize patterns that only appear after you've seen enough things go wrong. By now, you've seen plenty. That instinct has become part of how you think. You complete a turbocharged front wheel drive project producing nearly 500 horsepower at the wheels on a platform that was never designed for numbers like that. After 2 frightening test drives, you develop your own traction management solution that finally puts the power to the ground. The finished build is featured in a well-known Japanese performance magazine, introducing your work to enthusiasts you've never met. Within a week of publication, messages arrive from dozens of people across different countries, all inspired by what you built in your own garage. Level 6, the professional tuner. You're 29 now, and this has become your career. Not just something that earns money occasionally, but something that consistently pays the bills. That's a very different stage. A modest workshop, a vehicle lift, shared access to a dyno at a nearby facility, a laptop loaded with multiple ECU tuning programs, and a schedule booked nearly 3 weeks in advance. Working professionally teaches you something your home garage never could. When it's your own car, you're willing to accept certain risks and delays. When it's a customer's vehicle and their money, the standard changes completely. The difference between a tune that simply runs and one that's truly correct is almost invisible to most people, but it becomes your highest priority. Customers arrive with cars they've bought cheaply or modified poorly, hoping you can make them right. Some projects can be saved. Others are genuinely unsafe, forcing you to have conversations that People rarely want to hear. After seeing enough engines fail because of poor tuning decisions, you learn there are standards you refuse to compromise, even if someone leaves disappointed. Over time, you develop specialties: turbocharging naturally aspirated engines, ethanol fuel conversions, and older Japanese performance engines that many tuners avoid because they're complex and time-consuming. The knowledge most people choose to ignore becomes the expertise that defines your reputation, and you price your work accordingly. The community sees you differently now, not simply as someone who built a fast car, but as someone who built a professional reputation. A successful build is one achievement. A respected business is the result of delivering that same standard every single time. Level 7, the established workshop. You're 33 years old. The dream has become a real business. 3 service bays, 2 vehicle lifts, your own dyno, and 2 full-time technicians. One of them started with almost no experience. You trained him from the beginning. Today, he's a better mechanic than you. We're at the same age because he had someone willing to teach him. Your shop's reputation now reaches well beyond your local area. Customers drive 4 hours because they trust your work. You've even turned away projects that didn't meet your standards even when the customer couldn't understand why. Those conversations are never easy. But protecting your reputation matters more than making another sale. Cars built in your shop begin winning time attack competitions. One vehicle you tuned sets a regional record in its class. You also become a teacher. You host training workshops inside the shop and speak at automotive events, sharing technical knowledge with people who are just beginning their journey. You publish detailed guides that help others understand the craft. The lessons that took you 15 years to learn now reach others in a fraction of the time because you're organizing your experience instead of leaving everyone to figure it out alone. Watching others improve becomes one of the most rewarding parts of your work. It's satisfying in a way that has nothing to do with horsepower. Running the business, however, proves more difficult than building engines ever was. Invoices, insurance, tax filings, expensive equipment that breaks at the worst possible time, employees who need support, take time off, or move on to new opportunities. You approach every challenge the same way you approached every mechanical problem, methodically, one step at a time, believing that every problem has a solution once you fully understand what's actually causing it. Level 8, the creator of legends. You're 38 years old, and the car resting inside your workshop is built to break a world record. Not maybe. Not someday. You know it's capable because you've checked every calculation hundreds of times. Every component was selected without compromise. Every system has been tested, refined, and tested again. Every variable has been accounted for. The driver is the most talented person you've ever worked with, someone whose experience reaches the international level. The project is a Nissan Skyline, stripped to the minimum allowed by the rules and rebuilt around a custom engine, producing power figures that would have seemed impossible 20 years earlier. You assembled that engine yourself over the course of 9 months. Not because you had no other option, but because nobody else could understand every detail the way you do. Record day finally arrives. The first run is promising, but it doesn't set the record. The data from the second attempt reveals a small fuel delivery problem near the top of fourth gear, something hidden during earlier testing. You solve it that evening. The following day, the Skyline makes a Clean pass from start to finish. The world record falls. By a margin larger than even you expected. You don't rush to celebrate online. Instead, you drive home. Sit quietly in your kitchen. Pour yourself a hot drink. And think back to the old Civic parked inside a small concrete garage. The single fluorescent light. The laptop balanced on a step stool. The journey from that moment to this one feels almost impossible to measure. Yet when you look back, the path makes perfect sense. Every lesson prepared you for the next. Every mistake became experience. Every project taught you something the previous one never could. That's how legends are built. One lesson, one car, and one decision at a time. Level 9, the legacy. You're 42 years old. Over the years, your shop has trained 11 technicians who now operate successful workshops of their own. One of the cars you built is displayed in a museum celebrating Japanese automotive history in Tokyo. You've even been invited to speak at an international technical summit, sharing your experience with engineers from the very manufacturers whose cars inspired your journey. You still spend time in the workshop. Not every day and not on every project. The business demands far more of your attention now. But whenever a truly special build arrives, you're still involved from start to finish. Because the moment you stop working with your hands, experience slowly becomes theory. And in a tuning shop, theory without practice is a risk you're never willing to accept. Somewhere today, a 16-year-old is standing in a small concrete garage beside a used car they probably paid too much for. Their toolbox is incomplete. Their confidence isn't. A laptop sits balanced on an old chair, or a stack of boxes while a repair video plays on the screen. They'll make mistakes. They'll strip bolts, install parts incorrectly, and question whether they're capable of finishing the job. Eventually they'll solve the problem. And in that moment, they'll discover something that shapes the next 20 years of their life. Most of them will keep learning. Some will eventually reach the level you reached. A handful will go even further. Because